My name is Darren Hupke, and this is Pixels and Polygons, part of the Soundstone Network. Welcome to a new episode of Pixels and Polygons. I am Darren Hupke, the host of the show. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back and checking out another episode. Hopefully this is another entertaining one for you, and I appreciate you for coming back week after week. If you are new, it's a simple pitch. I sit down with a guest each week and I ask them a video game related prompt or question, and we talk about it. It's 20 to 40 minutes or so each episode. This can stem from topics like what's a underappreciated or below average game you love that doesn't get enough attention, or what is your history with video games? When did you start playing and when did you fall in love with them? Or why do you play the games that you play? There could be a lot of different things. The conversations can go in a lot of different directions, but the point is just to have a great and thoughtful conversation that maybe sparks your own ideas or your own interests as a listener to think about your own responses and hopefully just have some fun along the way. If you like what you hear and you want to support the show, I've got a few different ways you can do that. I have links in the show notes below to everything that I do, and I'll highlight one of those in particular. Pixels and Polygons Quarterly is, as you guessed it, a quarterly magazine about retro video games. It evolved from my retro gamezine project. Instead of covering a single game in a month, it is now a quarterly release where I cover a few different games in each issue. There's an overarching theme with every issue, and I'll have an original essay that ties all of the games together. But in addition to that, you'll have individual game histories and development details, personal experiences from all the different writing contributors, scans of magazines, manuals, artwork, even of the era, like reviews, a lot of details and artifacts if you are a fan of those games or a fan of the games in that era. The goal is to highlight and cover games that maybe aren't the AAA top 10 of all time type games, but games that deserve some attention and maybe forgotten and maybe a whole new generation should discover and enjoy. So hopefully you enjoy what you read. Quarterly release, you can find them on pixelsandpolygons.net in a physical format, or you can find them over on my Patreon in my digital store. A few different options for you, so check those out. Links in the show notes below. With that out of the way, we can start the episode right after an ad from one of our Soundstone Network partners.
Listen to Flashback 64, the chronological Nintendo 64 podcast. Hosts Gui, McKenna, and friends flashback to the 90s and early 2000s with a look at the Nintendo 64's catalog and its contemporary cultural and historical context. Starting with the console's launch titles and proceeding in release order, we discuss classics like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Star Fox 64, as well as some not-so-beloved games, lesser-known titles, and everything in between. Along with game-specific deep dives, we also cover other bits of pop culture from the time, like films, music, and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, welcome to Pixels and Polygons, a conversational podcast about video games. I am Darren Hupke, and I'm back again with a returning guest, and we'll call them Pixels and Polygons All-Star now.
Sure, why not?
Sure. New title, new name, new episode. We've got Matt, aka Stormageddon, here again. Hello, welcome back to the show, Matt. How are you?
I'm so glad to be back. It's been so long since we've chatted, and I just enjoy chatting with you so much, Darren. So it's great to be here.
The bit is back. It's been so long,
Yes.
and I cannot believe we've let this much time pass, but here we are, back again.
Here we are. We did it.
Yeah, we are back, and we're going to have some fun with this one. This is going to be another one of those personal story episodes, so if you love those, buckle up. If you don't, see you next week. But before we get into it, let's talk about Icebreaker. Let's do something but actually, because you're not catching us up with any projects or anything. What's a recent game that you've rolled credits on? That you've seen the end all the way through. Not that there's any judgment in you not finishing a game all the way through to the credits, but what was that last one that you did actually see through and it kept you all the way to the end?
So the most recent game I finished is also one that I wrote a review about in January. It's called Big Hops. It is by Luckshot Games, and it is a 3D platformer that takes the best parts of like Mario Odyssey, Kirby, and Breath of the Wild and kind of fuses them together. It's about a 10 to 15 hour romp, and you are playing as this young frog Hop who gets wrapped up in this weird adventure with a otherworldly being named Dis, who sucks him into another plane of existence to like go on an adventure and collect things for him. And it's really goofy and silly and fun. It's got a great animation style. It's really fun to control and move about. There's no combat. It's just platforming and puzzle solving. And it was a blast. I really loved it. If you want to know my deeper thoughts, there's a review on the Patreon for Fun and Games that's free for everyone to read, no matter what level you're on or even if you're subscribed at all, where I go really deep into it. But it was just, it's one of those indie games that you play and go, I almost missed this, and I'm so glad I didn't because it's probably one of the best of its kind. I feel like 3D platformers are hard to just kind of harder to spit out. Like, there's so many 2D platformers in the indie space, and so many of them are great. But I feel like 3D platformers, like, because the camera is so hard to get perfect and the control is so hard to get perfect, that they're less frequent. And so, I didn't love the original Yooka-Laylee. I've heard the remaster version is much better, but like I didn't feel like it felt tight or controlled well. But this game from moment one was really great and a blast to play and just fun. It kept moving. It wasn't it wasn't a collectathon. There were things to collect, but it was more focused on the platforming and the adventure side of it. It was a good time.
That's fun. I should look out for that. And I'll check out the review as well. But thank you for sharing that. But let's get into an icebreaker then. Let's ask you one of these questions. Let's see, which one shall we do? Is there an option or a setting that you always change before starting a game? Have I asked you this one before?
No. So there are two answers to this. The modern game answer is if there is a frames per second / graphics quality option, I always pick frames. I like it to move smoother than look pretty because I used to play plenty of ugly games that I loved, and I just wanted to move smooth as butter. So I always hit those 60 frames.
That's how I live my life too. I live my life that way. I want to look smooth and run pretty, and not the other way around. So yeah,
right, exactly. But then the other answer is, and it's kind of a boring one, but it's important to me, is I always turn on subtitles if they're not already on. I don't always need them like on TV and movies, but I like when they are there, especially since, volume levels of video games, sometimes dialogue isn't recorded great, sometimes whatever it is, mixed whatever, but I just like to have it there to read too, because in case I miss something, or maybe I looked away for a second, but the subtitles are hanging there, so whatever I missed, I can still read. Also, like, I play the Yakuza games, I've talked about that before, and like, I prefer those in Japanese because I love those voice actors, and I've been with them since Yakuza 0, so like, I always have subtitles on for that too, because I prefer the Japanese voice acting for those games.
I have to invert my controls. I don't know why. I'm just wired that way, and I have to invert them, and so it's always
can't have that inverted look. Up should be up. God damn it!
The y-axis is the most important one. Like, I've actually like played games where it's like, oh, I can't invert X, but that's okay as long as I can at least get the Y. Like I need down because it's the stick. And I'm pushing it down, and so it's going up over there. And like my brain,
we're not flying planes, Darren. We're not flying planes.
It's exactly what I'm doing. I'm flying a plane every time I play a video game. Oh man, fun. Okay, and that reminds me, I need to go buy that Yakuza 0, just because I just need to buy it. So.
Hot take. Apparently, they changed a lot in the director's cut. So if you have a PS4 or 5. And get the original version.
I don't.
It'll be cheaper.
I do, but I'm the annoying person who has the PS5 Pro with no disc drive, and I have thought about going out to buy that disc drive. And yeah, I have heard that they have changed some stuff in it, and they also did the terrible thing of like delisting and making the other one accessible. So yeah, we need to pick up
I mean, I have the new version of Zero on Switch. I haven't played very far into it yet. I'm going to do that this year, but like from what I've heard from my friends who got me into the series, they're like the new one is like the story changes they made are awful, and that you should play the original. I'm sure for your experience, not having the previous experience, it'll still be a great game and it'll be fun, because I don't actually know what the differences are. I haven't played through it yet, but I also have in my Amazon cart, which I don't use Amazon that often, but I was able to find it there, the $20 version of the original, which I'm going to buy just so I have it, because I've heard these things. But that said, play Yakuza 0. It's an incredible video game. Any version of it will do, as long as you play it.
Yeah, okay. I think I need to get on that. I almost bought, I saw some email and like the Final Fantasy Tactics, the new re-release of it. On PS5, it was like $30. And I was like, $30? Oh yeah, sure, I'll buy that. And then like I was literally in the cart about to click payment after confirming my card and everything. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have a disc drive. Like I don't like this would just be just to have the box art or something. And I was like, well, you know what? It wouldn't be too bad of an idea just to have that box art and have it nice sitting there and all stuff. And I was like, that's a waste. That's a waste of money. Stop it, Darren. And so I backed out and I canceled and everything. But I literally almost bought one. But okay, well, we're back here to do the Pixels and Polygons thing, and that's ask a question and have a conversation about it. This one, the last episode you were on, we talked and we heard about your origin story and kind of how you kind of came and grew and found those things and which consoles you went through and the genres and all the fun stuff. Right now, I want you to pinpoint and nail down, but what is one of your favorite gaming systems? So, like, what is that one? And, let's talk about the story about that. You know, when did you get it? What were some of those key memories, key games, key details that, stand out and still stand out to you? And why is it important? But, what is one of your favorite gaming systems, Matt?
So in the previous episode, I may have said the exact words, the Nintendo Switch is my favorite video game console of all time. And while that is broadly true, it's only true because of my actual favorite video game system of all time, which is the Game Boy Advance. I was a big Game Boy head. I had the original Game Boy brick, like the big one with Kirby and Super Mario Land 2 and the 6 golden coins is one of the best 2D Mario games ever made, full stop. It's why I love Wario. Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3 is also one of the greatest platformers of all time. But the actual greatest 2D platformer of all time is on the Game Boy Advance, and it's called Super Mario Land 4. It is just graphically, bizarreness, gameplay-wise, it's just the most ridiculous game I've ever played, and I can never recommend it enough. But yeah, the Game Boy Advance is my favorite video game console of all time. I had that purple, horizontal, original launch Game Boy Advance. I don't remember exactly when I got it, but it was definitely within that release year of 2001, probably closer to my birthday in the fall, if I had to guess. But I remember getting it and Super Mario. I think it was Super Mario. God, the naming of the Super Mario Land Advance 1, Super Mario Brothers 2. I think Advance 1 was Mario Brothers 2. I got it with that and then a few other games, and like it has remained my go-to console. I've still not played everything on it that I want to play, but like some of my landmark games, my favorite Zelda game of all time, which changes every so often, it's always a 2D game, but probably my number one Zelda game of all time is on the Game Boy Advance, which is Minish Cap. Oh, the irony that Capcom has made the best Zelda game I've ever played, but I love Minish Cap. I think it's gorgeous. It's aged well. It's one of the few games that's not about Ganon in the series. I really love that game, and with it now on the NSO, I know more people have been playing it. And so, like, I had that. I had so many games on this console, and I loved it. There was something about the form factor, about how it still fit in your pocket, about how the sprites were like, what if you amped up a Super Nintendo, right? They were more brighter and more vibrant. The funny thing is, I wouldn't know till an adult that most of the colors I saw on the OG screen were actually different than what they wanted them to look like, because they had to adjust them so you could actually see them because of the bad screen. Like, the coloring was off. Like, when I played Fusion for the first time on NSO, things were so much more vibrant than I remembered because of how they had to design it for the backlight to like show up the way they wanted to, or even before the backlight. But I mentioned Fusion. Metroid Fusion to this day is one of my favorite games of all time. It's my number one Metroid game with like Dread right behind it because it's a direct sequel. And I never thought I would get a direct sequel to my favorite Metroid game of all time. So the sequel of my favorite game of all time also is one of my favorite games of all time. But like Fusion, I have played in the double digits. When it came out on NSO, I replayed it. And then I got a physical copy on my analog pocket, so I replayed it. And then Dread was coming out, so I replayed it again. Like, just, I've played it so many times. And I like the segmented version of that game where, like, you can explore, but explore in separate areas. I think it's really a smart way to do it. It makes it less overwhelming. I mean, Silksong now does a very similar thing where you're exploring. You can go everywhere, but your kind of goal is to explore a specific area till its end and then go to the next area. I like that design ethos for Metroidvania better. But yeah, it's one of those consoles that I look back on most fondly. I regret most that I don't have my original collection anymore because I sold it. And I think it's the thing for me that made handheld gaming a staple in my gaming diet that remains to this day.
Yeah, I love a few things that you said there that I want to touch on. The Minish Cap, like I had my wife, she doesn't play games nearly as much as me, even at a fraction as much as I do. But even then, that's probably still like more than a lot of people do because I play a lot of games. But that was one of the ones I convinced her to like give it a shot to, because we had a shared custody of a Game Boy Advance for a little while when we were teenagers. I had that original wide, launch Game Boy Advance unit. I loved those clicky shoulder buttons, and I loved the little lip that they had and everything too. Like, I loved that design of it. And so when I was just dating her at the time, but my wife, her like aunt came down to visit her and like had some Game Boy Advance, and so my wife was playing it, and her aunt was just like, yeah, I don't ever really play that thing, you can have it and all that stuff. So she got to keep this Game Boy Advance SP, and I was like instantly like that backlight was just like, oh man, like I gotta get that thing, like, well, you ain't gonna play this that much, like let's just go ahead and like pass this around. So I remember selling my Game Boy Advance and able to like make sure I could like buy some games with it and all that stuff. But then we just had the one system, and it was like, but I was trying to get her to play games, and so I did that through like Super Mario Advance 1, because Super Mario Brothers 2 is her favorite Mario Brothers game. So I had that, and Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, one of my favorite Harvest Moon, and probably is my favorite Harvest Moon game of all time, maybe next to the PS1, like Back to Nature. But having that game, and like there was another one on there, and like just both having save files and just both having like the ability to kind of like play around with it. It was just like tough to like give it to her and her take home at night, and like me just want to like be stuck and play and everything. But eventually, like I said, long story. Eventually Minish Cap was the one that I wanted her to try. She played Link to the Past and loved it, and so just kind of keeping her in that same world, Minish Cap was one that she picked up and enjoyed a lot of. And I think even from my time playing it, I think it just doesn't ever take itself like too fully seriously, but it also doesn't like try and be too big for its britches. Like it's not a portable game. It has to be small and portable. It's like it just knows its pacing and isn't like too bloated at all. Like you can get through it in like a much quicker rate than you can other like Legend of Zelda games. And I think that's part of what makes it like really entertaining. There's never really like, oh man, I hate this part of it, or oh, I never like revisiting this part of it. Like it's just well paced enough. And I think the same thing for Fusion. Like even with its segmented design, like that also just allowed it to be more like open and close, or like pick up and play. Like, you weren't like in the middle of like adventuring in a whole new area and lost when you had to like put your game down and come back to it. Like you could just, pick up and resume, and even in that smaller kind of segmented style, like it was way more replayable and way more playable in shorter bursts and everything. So I think that like worked in its favor, like the portability, but also taking into mind people's like time and everything with this. They weren't going to primarily be playing these things, but jokes on them. I kind of was. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. That was a fantastic one. And then as it started getting closer to DS launch, Square started just like, oh, hey, we'll just put everything here. And you're getting Final Fantasy 4 Advanced, 5 Advanced, 6 Advanced, Like just so much good stuff. And I absolutely love that system as well. So you mentioned liking that original form factor. Like, did you ever actually get an SP, or did you always stick with that? Okay, so which SP did you get? Because they also loved their colors and varieties, and the tribal one that even Mario had, that sick tribal tattoo, bro. Yeah.
I had the red one. I own a blue one now. My co-host Jeff found one for me before I got my Analog Pocket, I think before they came out. I had the blue SP, the red SP, and I played it all the time, loved it. I did, of course, trade it in for the big chunky silver DS when that came out because I wanted the latest and greatest, and it had a Game Boy Advance slot. So why would I ever need my old Game Boy SP? So dumb. But I loved the SP as well. I was able to play it in the car at night on long car rides because I could actually see what the hell I was doing because it had a front light, which it's funny because there were two SPs. There was one that had the launch one had the front light, which was not great, better than nothing. And then eventually the final version right before the DS came out was the backlit one, which is not the version I have now. I still have the front light one, but I loved that form factor as well. It was easy to travel with. It's funny, I forgot as an adult when I was holding the new one that I got that Jeff got me. I was like, it's so tiny. Was it always this tiny? It's like, well, no, you also got bigger. Your hands are bigger now. But also I forgot it doesn't, because everything now, you put everything to sleep, right? I think since the DS on, the portable consoles go to sleep when you close them. The SP doesn't do that. When you close it, you can close it, but it's still running the game, and you can drain the crap out of the battery. And you mentioned all these games. Like, there are so many games that... So Jeff and I lament this a lot. We've done several console retrospectives. We've done the OG Game Boy. We've done the Game Boy Advance. We've done the PS Vita. And like the thing that Jeff and I talk about that doesn't exist anymore, that gamers today couldn't possibly understand, is when we were growing up, you couldn't put the console game on a handheld. It wouldn't run it. So you'd have to do a different version, turn a 3D platformer into a 2D platformer, change the game completely. And so there were dedicated handheld versions of games. And that just doesn't exist anymore. Now, Witcher 3 is on the Switch. Does it run great? Not particularly, but it's that game. It's the full game. All of it's there. Or to the better end now, like Cyberpunk 2077 is on the Switch 2, and it runs really well. And it's that whole game. Like, it's not a Switch 2 version. It's the game. And I miss that. And the Game Boy Advance was full of those kinds of games. I mean, I don't know that we would have gotten like the remakes of Fire Red and Leaf Green. Incredible Pokemon games, Sapphire and Ruby. You mentioned Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. So I loved Mario's. We talked in the last episode how much I love Super Mario RPG. It made me want to get a Super Nintendo. Mario and Luigi was the first time I played a game and went, I think it's the first time. It's definitely the first time that it was outright. Like, video games can be funny. And I laughed out loud because the dialogue is so well written in those games. And that would be the case beyond, from Mario RPG all the way through all the Paper Marios, the Mario Luigi games, up until Brothership Now, which I really loved. But like, it started with Superstar Saga. And also for me, like, it cemented the Luigi as a coward thing that started with the cartoon and some other stuff, but it also gave Luigi a character, like pushing against that fear, being brave, being skilled, being whatever, being the dreamer, being the kinder one, whatever it is. It just characterized those characters in a different way. Like Bowser's whole personality exists now under the guise of Jack Black, who does a fantastic job. Started with those games. Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story specifically, I think, is the modern characterization of Bowser. The more humorous characterization of Bowser comes from those games. But even like a game like Golden Sun 1 and 2, two of the best RPGs I've ever played, and they exist nowhere else except on NSO now. And like, we got a third one on the DS, I think, that was not good from what I recall. But like that series is, and like, I love the first Golden Sun. Like, it's a little finicky, but it is one of the coolest stories, some of the coolest mechanics, the different sprites with the different elemental abilities. So good, and then the ports were really solid also, with some exceptions. All of the Mario game ports were great. They eventually released a run of NES games on the Game Boy Advance, and that was the first time I was like, I'm playing a console game on a handheld. Like, it blew my mind that was possible.
Yeah.
And it started with the Game Boy Advance. They would go on to put, Super Mario 64 on the DS and other things, but it really started there. like ports and stuff became a primary function of that console. And then all the Final Fantasy games. Like I played Final Fantasy IV for the first time on the Pixel remaster on Switch, which I loved. It's become one of my favorite Final Fantasies. But I've watched video capture footage of the Game Boy Advance version of it, and it looks incredible.
Yeah.
Those ports are so well done. I have Dawn of Souls, Final Fantasy 1 and 2. They are the worst Final Fantasy games ever made. I don't care what anybody says. Those games are impossible to play. The Dawn of Souls versions of them are really good. Like, they're really cool. They look awesome. I think you and I have talked about this before, but like the sprite work on the Game Boy Advance will be timeless forever. Those games will always look incredible. Whereas, I love PlayStation and N64 games as much. I love Super Mario 64. I feel like has aged better because it's cartoony. But you look at GoldenEye, a game I love, and it looks awful. All of it, the scenery, the character models, all of it, because they were going for quote unquote realism. But like Game Boy Advance didn't have any of that. Like it's just this gorgeous sprite work that now modern games are emulating, and it debuted with the system. And I don't think there was some of it on the DS. There was still some beautiful sprite work on the DS, but it mostly moved to more 3D on the DS and the 3DS. And like, I miss dedicated handheld games. I miss dedicated sprite-based games. There are more of them now. There are more modern games that are doing sprite work. It's mostly in the indie vein now, but like, I love the look of the games on this console. Like I mentioned Wario Land 4 before, one of the most brightly colored, bizarrely designed, coolest looking games with like, so there's a YouTuber whose name I'm forgetting now who did a video called Why Does Wario Land 4 Sound That Way? And it talks about all of the voice lines they compressed, they used for like Charles Martinetti's version of his voice that he did for Wario. It's kind of when Wario debuted his weird and wacky voice. He might have been in one of the N64 games, might have had some voice also in like Mario Party or something, but like, it was probably Super Mario Kart was the first time, but it was one of the early days of Charles Martinetti's performance. But it's so off the wall compared to his more reserved stuff in like the party games and the kart racers. And it's just it's one of those games one of those consoles that when I go back and play it, I'm never disappointed. And you can throw a rock and hit a good game. Like there are stinkers on that console, like any other console. But like even from what I think it was you who was telling me that the GBA version of Tony Hawk Pro Skater is also very good.
That Tony Hawk 2,
the PlayStation version.
Yeah. It's this isometric one, and it's almost like 720, the old Atari like arcade game. Like it is not at all trying to be like the console games, but it's still created an original game that takes the essence of stringing those tricks along and all that stuff, but doing it in a way that was like, wow, like this is definitely punching out of its weight class and everything for sure. And that's I think the same thing for the Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and things like that that were and then the first WarioWare game was on Game Boy Advance, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, like it had a long life. Like it evolved from, like this, I don't want to say like, like a weak handheld. Like, I mean, it was a handheld. It was the next generation, like, Game Boy and everything. But like by the time, like, it was on its, like leading into the DS launch and everything, they were tapping into all new, like, like they fully understood the hardware better. The pixels and everything were like bigger, brighter, bolder. And like, there was like high action games. There was like, there was plenty of stuff for people. And like, that was just a great time. Yeah, that Game Boy Advance. And then on top of all of that, I forget all about this, but I realized why, like when I was, when I away from home playing and loving those games, but I still was playing those games at home because I had the Game Boy player on my GameCube and like blowing up those games, like Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was better on the Game Boy player because it used the rumble of the GameCube controller to find hidden items that weren't necessarily needed at all by any means whatsoever. But just the idea that I can have this like enhanced version potentially at home, but then still take it on the go and make progress and then come back and see it on my big screen again later on and everything. Like, that was just so rad. Like, I loved that Game Boy Advance.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Game Boy player. So I never had the Super Game Boy growing up. I always wanted it, could never get it. But I got a GameCube. I bought my GameCube a week before they lowered the price. I will never forget it. Like I had to pay an extra whatever it was, $50 or $100 because they literally lowered the price a week later. But anyway, I tried to go back to GameStop and say, hey, can I get the money back? Can I return it? They didn't go for it. But as soon as the Game Boy player came out, I bought it day and date. And like, not only playing those games on the big screen, but then stuff like Four Swords Adventure, for the original Four Swords, where you would use Crystal Chronicles on the GameCube that would use the Game Boy Advance controllers as controllers, and you could play a multiplayer Final Fantasy game. And the Game Boy game showed you stuff on the map that you couldn't see in game or whatever it was. Like, all of that integrated stuff was so awesome. And I loved the Game Boy player. Like, being able to play, again, the reason the Nintendo Switch is like my dream console is because of the Game Boy player. Being able to play my handheld games at home and on the go was the coolest thing to me. There was nothing cooler, and I loved doing it.
Yeah, we had a really gross setup for one of those games. I think it was when we were trying to play Four Swords in an apartment. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with my best friend and a bunch of his friends when he was still enrolled in high school. And he had his own apartment, which makes no sense. It was out here in Arizona, where I'm at now. But there were 7 of us living in this 2-bedroom apartment. So it was as clean and as fun as you thought it might be. One bathroom, and everybody's work and school schedule meant that there was always that fog of somebody's shower constantly hanging in the air, so it never dried. And a few of the roommates would keep their towels in the bathroom, so they're constantly just moldy and mildewy, and they would still use them, not knowing any better, because they were 16 and 17-year-old kids that had no legal reason to be living on their own. But hey, this is what was happening. Anywho, fast forward to us trying to play some Game Boy Advance connected GameCube game, and I'm pretty sure it was Four Swords, but one of the Game Boy Advances we ended up using was a second TV with a GameCube setup and a Game Boy player plugged in, and it had it had the little external like output link cable slot that we plugged that into a second GameCube that was connected to our bigger TV. So 3 of the friends had their own Game Boy Advances, but a 4th player was using just a TV and a Game Boy player and a GameCube to act as one. And it was like mind breaking, so like why we had all this electronics and all these TVs and all these cables as like these poor teenagers and everything. It was a different time. One thing that I will like to speak out into the ether as well, we have a Game Boy Micro. So after the DS released, Nintendo released that really tiny Game Boy Micro, which if you've not seen that in person, it is the best Game Boy Advance. I honestly, Matt, if you have not held one of these in your hands, it's tiny, but like it's got those like cool shoulder buttons. The screen is like so bright. It is a backlit, beautifully like bright screen and everything. The games look amazing on it. I have one, and its battery is shot. I've tried to buy like third party off market ones and all that stuff, and I just can't seem to get it working. If I put the Nintendo one in there that's shot, it will like flicker on, or if I plug it in, it will stay on. But as soon as I put another battery in, it's just dead to me. If anybody knows how to repair these things, please reach out to me. I want this thing up and running. It is so small, and I still have my copy of Final Fantasy V Advance and everything. I'd love to just slip that in my pocket and go to work one day and be able to, grind for some AP and unlock some jobs and everything. Help me out. I mean, anybody out there. But yeah, that's fun. I'm glad you shared the Game Boy Advance. That's I can talk about the Game Boy Advance all day. So it's fun to go back and through there. Any final memories or last minute details you want to share about your time with the Game Boy Advance and why it's so special?
I mean, we've covered a lot of it. I think the big thing is something that we touched on, that I miss the era of like dedicated handheld games. I just feel like we're getting them in the indie scene now, and with the Steam Deck and other things, and people are emulating stuff. But like, I love this console so much. We did do a great retrospective with the incredible Eric Guest from the Unlockables podcast it was episode 177 of Fun and Games, called The Advanced Way to Play, where we covered the Game Boy Advance in retrospective. And it was like it's one of those consoles that I feel like I can always talk about on any podcast forever, because I just have so many memories of it. I mean, just covering the games alone, like there was a time where I considered doing a Game Boy Advance podcast, because like our friends of ours who were doing N64 podcasts, like the library is just so massive that you'd be doing it forever. They wouldn't all be bangers, but you'd be doing it forever. But like, I think that there's really no console like it. Consoles have come close, and there's things that are special about the DS and the 3DS, and we've done a 3DS retrospective as well, and I love those handhelds as well for different reasons. But there's just something so particularly special about the Game Boy Advance. I mean, we also got some of the earliest remakes were on the Game Boy Advance. Like Kirby Return to Dreamland was a remake of the NES game and the superior version. And one of the best, like the best version of the first Metroid game, and one of the best Metroid games, Metroid Zero Mission, which I've also replayed many times, and like added so much to the lore of Samus. And like there's a cool I hate stealth sections in games, let me be clear, but there was a pretty cool stealth section in that game. But like, remakes are a thing that are a dime a dozen now, as far as they're pretty common and they're pretty ubiquitous in the gaming space. But back then, it wasn't common. And especially to build one from the ground up, like, I'd say that Kirby A Nightmare in Dreamland is much closer to the NES game, though looks way better, but structurally is pretty the same. But like, Zero Mission's a completely different game. Like, there's narrative beats in it that didn't exist in the first game. There's storytelling and moments that didn't exist in the first game, right? Like, they completely designed new areas that weren't in the first game. And so, like, that kind of stuff also, like, we just didn't see. I mean, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance also is a different game. It's not a port of the PlayStation game. It's a different game. And, like, just being able to do that and doing it so well, I think, is what will always make that console stand apart in a way that, like, other handhelds are awesome, but nothing, I think, to me compares to the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. All right. Well, man, it's always fun talking with you. Again, you've got a free pass to come back on the show anytime. If you want to see the questions again, I'll send them over to you anytime. But let's link up and do that. Oh, yeah. Speaking of linking up, we talked about playing that Marvel beat 'em up. I never bought that. I should buy that now so I don't forget.
You should do that. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna play that game over and over again. It's a blast.
That's fun. Okay. But yeah, appreciate you being here. The links in the show notes below for everything. And just appreciate having you on the show. Everyone, thank you for listening. Come back again next week for another new episode. But to all of you and to Matt, have a good one. Bye.
Hello, we are Kirby Conversations, a podcast on Kirby along with adjacent subjects like Smash Brothers, HAL Laboratory, and other related Nintendo games.
In each episode, we take an in-depth look at a new Kirby topic, drawing on our decades of experience with the series. I'm Sean Douglas. I'm a writer and podcaster with a background in video game and theater journalism.
And I'm Gigi, the editor-in-chief of Kirby and a big Kirby fan from Brazil. I translate Kirby interviews from Japanese to English and research a bunch of obscure Kirby media.
And I'm Bridget, a longtime fan, commentator, fan artist, and Kirby collector.
Join us for a mix of commentary and original reporting, deep dives into Kirby history, interviews with industry professionals, and more, as together we explore all things Kirby and HAL Laboratory. We're a proud part of the Soundstone Podcast Network, and you can find Kirby Conversations on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.